Well, the title of my sermon this morning is Go Find a Friend. Go Find a Friend. And we're going to be in 2 chapters mainly. It's actually not going to be as many scriptures as I normally use. But 1 Kings chapter 19 and 2 Kings chapter 2. Have you ever been in a place in your life where you were at the absolute bottom? Where you felt like you were absolutely alone? And you had no help from anyone? I remember at 16, I went to Mount Carmel High School over here in Breathitt County. I was okay. It was difficult to leave home from Michigan, the 600 miles to go down there. I was doing all right until I got out of the car, got all my stuff loaded in my room, and I watched my dad's truck pass in the distance. And I knew I was absolutely alone. I didn't know anybody down here. Absolutely no one. I found some great friends and great teachers, people that influenced my life. But at that time, I was a 16-year-old boy, didn't know where I was, what I was doing, and who would be with me when I did it. I was absolutely alone. You ever been in a place where you just felt completely lost, fearful, not sure of your future? Perhaps you were absolutely broke with no opportunity to provide for yourself. You were hungry. Maybe even you were wanting to die. Well, today I want to talk about a Bible character was in that very situation. That was the exact spot that he was in, and that's how he was praying. God, just kill me. Let's just get it over with. I'm done. Well, the man's name was Elijah. Now, surprisingly enough, Elijah is, at least to the Jews, the Hebrews, he was the greatest prophet in the Old Testament. I mean, he ranks right up there with Moses. Moses gave him the law. Elijah was the prophet. We often get the idea that the Bible characters that we read about, they are on some kind of really high plane that's unattainable godliness type deal. Wow, they're so far up there, they know God, they're so much better, well, I could never be that. Well, the Bible actually tells us that that's wrong, and specifically tells us that Elijah was most like us. James chapter 5 verse 17 says, Elijah was a man with a nature like ours. In other words, he was just like us. He had the same needs, same struggles, same fears, same problems, same situations. Well, where we're going to find Elijah in the story when we get to 1 Kings chapter 19, he's just left Mount Carmel, the mountain in Israel, not Breathitt County. He just had this fantastic event where by himself he went up against 450 prophets of Baal and plus priestess of Ashtoreth. They danced and sang and cut and shouted and yelled all day long for their God to hear, and they didn't. And Elijah, with one prayer that was a sentence and a half long, God sends down fire, consumes the altar, consumes the sacrifice, shows that he is God over all, and puts all the other all the prophets and priestesses to shame. In fact, they all end up getting killed over it. Fantastic victory. Well, then he finds out that the queen was all upset because a bunch of her priestesses had been killed. So she tells Elijah, I'm going to kill you. If I don't do it by the end of the day, the gods strike me dead. So he takes off running, and he runs all the way down to Arabia, what we would call Mount Sinai. And he goes and he hides in a cave. And he is the situation that we were talking about. He was hungry. He was broke. He wasn't sure about his future. He was fearful. He was lost. And he was absolutely alone, wanting to die. And so this is where we're going to pick up in the story, 1 Kings chapter 19, starting with verse 13. So it was, when Elijah had heard, speaking of God's presence, that he wrapped his face in his mantle, and he went out and he stood at the entrance of the cave. Suddenly a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he said, "I've been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant. They've torn down your altars and killed your prophets with the sword. And I alone am left, and they seek to take my life." Skipping down to verse 18. God's response to him was, "I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him." So he departed from there, and he found Elisha, the son of Shaphat. By the way, in verses 15 through 17, God gives him directions, and he goes and anoints a king, and then he tells him to go find this man named Elisha. Now Elisha was plowing with 12 oxen before him, and he was with the 12. Then Elijah passed by, and he threw his mantle on him. And he left the oxen, and he ran after Elijah, and he said, "Please let me kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you." And he said to him, "Go back, for what have I done for you?" So Elisha turned back from him and took the yoke of oxen and slaughtered them and boiled their flesh, using oxen's equipment, and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and he followed Elisha and became his servant. Now, what we see here is Elisha was a very well-to-do man. He had 12 yoke of oxen, and he was operating the 12. So he had at least, in his farm, he had at least 24 oxen, which is more than most families would have had of one in their lifetime. He was a wealthy man, had a big farm. He was well-to-do. All Elijah did was just come by and take his cloak, and he just placed it over Elisha as Elisha's plowing and walks away. That triggers something in Elisha's heart. Now, we don't have it in the scripture, but I'm sure at this point, God had already been speaking to Elisha, encouraging him and saying, something's going to happen and you're going to want to follow this. Because when you have all that kind of money and you're doing well for yourself, and this prophet just comes by and puts his coat over you, I don't know about you, but I'd probably say, "Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate that," and just keep going. Thanks for the new coat. See you later. But he doesn't. He goes and follows after Elijah. Elijah didn't do much. Didn't even say much. When Elisha said, "Hey, can I just go say goodbye to my family?" He's like, "Hey, you can do whatever you want. What did I do for you?" Nothing big, right? So he takes the oxen, he kills them, and he has this huge feast in his neighborhood, feeds everybody in the neighborhood. He destroys the ox's equipment. Guess what? That means you're not turning any back. Once you destroy the equipment, you're not going back to farming. And he follows Elijah. Now I want to skip forward, and this is actually skipping forward some scholars say anywhere from 6 to 10 years of time, where Elisha has been serving and following Elijah. In verse 1 of chapter 2 it says, "And it came to pass, when the Lord was about to take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind, that Elijah went to Elisha with Elisha from Gilgal." Quite a distance, by the way. "Then Elijah said to Elisha, 'Stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me on to Bethel.' But Elisha said, 'As the Lord lives, and your soul lives, I will never leave you.' So they went down to Bethel." That's about halfway through Israel. They started in the north. They're about halfway through Israel right now. Verse 3, "Now the sons of the prophets who were at Bethel came out to Elisha, and they said to him, 'Do you know that the Lord will take away your master from over you today?' And he said, 'Yes, I know it.'" Shut up. Dan's paraphrase. "Then Elijah said to him, 'Elisha, stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me on to Jericho.' But he said to him, 'As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you.' So they came to Jericho. Now, Jericho's at the bottom southeast edge of Israel. You're only a few miles away from the border at this point. By the way, the border is the river Jordan. Now the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho came to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that the Lord will take your master from over you today?" And he answered, "Yes, I know." Shut up. Verse 6. Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me on to the Jordan." The Jordan's about 6 miles. But he said to him, "As the Lord lives and as your soul lives, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. And 50 men of the sons of prophets went and stood, facing them at a distance, while the two of them stood by the Jordan. Now Elijah took his mantle, rolled it up, and struck the water, and it was divided this way and that, so that the two of them crossed over on dry ground. Verse 9, and so it was when they had crossed over, that Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask, what may I do for you? Before I am taken away from you." Elisha said, "Please, let me have a double portion of your spirit be upon me." So he said, "You have asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if you see me when I am taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if not, it shall not be so." Then it happened as they continued on and talked that suddenly a chariot of fire appeared with horses of fire and separated the two of them. And Elisha went up in a whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha saw it, and he cried out, my father, the chariot of Israel and its horsemen." So he saw him no more. And he took hold of his clothes, and he tore them into pieces, showing his grief. He also took up the mantle of Elijah that had fallen from him, and went back and stood by the bank of the Jordan. We started out the story with Elijah all the way down in Arabia, speaking with God, being completely at the lowest point of his life, feeling completely alone, wanting to die, having no hope for the future. And when he tells God about it, God says, "Listen, I've got some jobs yet for you. I'm not done with you yet, buddy. I want you to go and anoint Jehu, and I want you to go and anoint Elisha." So, essentially, what God told him was, "I want you to go find a friend." At this point, Elijah was completely alone. All of his ministry had been by himself. He was the teacher of the prophets, and he had several servants throughout, but those servants didn't last very long. In fact, one of them turned out to be pretty sinful and ended up getting leprosy over it. He had no one that was truly faithful, a good friend. So he goes and finds Elisha. If you were trying to find a friend, now some of you may have just, taken your coat and let your friend use it. Us guys, we tried to do that in the cold, but it was for a totally different reason for you ladies, right? I was trying to endear you to ourselves. Here, well, I'll be cold for you, and then you warm up. Just, when I ask you on a date, make sure you say yes, right? Oh, come on, y'all can smile over this. I was joking. Many years, yeah. It's been many years for me, too. 20 since I've had my last one, I guess. Technically, we've been married after that. But so Elisha doesn't receive much from Elijah to start with, but he follows him anyway. Now it says that he makes him a servant, and he learned a lot from Elijah over the 6 to 10 years. But there's so much that's not written for us about the connection they have. God just told him, go find a friend. So what I want to do from our passage that we read, I want to talk about what a friend actually looks like. What a friend actually does. Proverbs chapter 18 verse 24 says, a man who has friends must himself be friendly. Elbert Hubbard said it this way, to have a friend, you must first be one. That's a good idea, right? To have a friend, you must be a friend. But the Bible is a little more harsh in its statement than what Elbert Hubbard was. It says you must be friendly. Not just good enough that you're a friend, but you got to act in a way that's actually friendly. I won't name names, but I knew a few ladies growing up that if they liked you, they treated you like a dog. They'd pick on you. Like I said, I didn't name any names. Christian, right? Christian. I didn't name any names, but man, they just treat you awful. They'd pick on you. They'd make fun of you. You know, that was, for me, I didn't take that kind of betrayal. I was like, well, if that's the way you're going to act, I'll see you later. Sonia never treated me that way. Not until after we were married, at least.
I'm going to tell her you said that.
Oh, please do. Please do. To be friendly is endearing. When you have someone that's being friendly to you, doesn't it draw you? You get the people that are snotty and mouthy and mean and selfish. They don't really want to be their friend. Don't mind being acquaintance. Maybe, they've got a lot of money and you want to kind of nuzzle up to them. But you don't really want to be their friend. The Bible says if you want to be a friend, you must be friendly. Elisha didn't know Elijah at all. And Elijah comes by and takes that cloak, that mantle, and places it over his shoulders. Now, I want you to understand this. For you and me, putting a coat on somebody, that's no big deal. Until you find out later, after Elijah is taken up into heaven, that same coat that he just gave Elisha gave him a double portion of Elijah's spirit. There was power in that coat. Now, it wasn't the coat itself. No. But it was the promise of God. Elijah was being friendly and became a friend. I remember there was a girl at the church I grew up at. Her mom was going through some stuff and came to be counseled by my dad. Well, while she was being counseled, the daughter was there at the house for my brother and I to just kind of stick around and, bide her time. Well, I was trying to be friendly. So I asked her, do you want a drink of water? Do you want something to eat? We've got ice cream. I can get you a bowl of ice cream. Do you want to watch a show? I was trying to be very friendly. And she was just sitting on the couch and she was like, no, just very cold. I was like, well, whatever. I tried, And then we get into school the next Monday morning. And she's like, man, you should have seen that Brett. And she just listed a whole list of things terrible about what I was and how much I was wanting her and wanting to be her. I'm like, nope, I'm just trying to be friendly. You know what? That never happened again neither. To be a friend, to have a friend, you must be friendly. Next, friends serve each other. If you go a little bit further in our passage in 2 Kings to chapter 3, verse 11, one of the guys is talking to the king and he's explaining that Elisha is here. And he says, yes, this is Elisha of Shaphat who poured the water over Elijah's hands. In other words, he would wash his hands. He would do the ritual for him of ritual washing. He did everything for Elijah. Elisha served Elijah. But it wasn't just one-sided. Elijah served Elisha for 6 to 10 years. He taught him everything he knew about God. And boy, were they in some situations if you read the passages. He served him. If you're going to be a good friend, if you're going to be friendly, you're going to serve your friends, right? This helps you kind of figure out who's your friends and who aren't, right? If you've got a friend and they only want you to do for them and they're not willing to do for anybody else, we don't usually call them friends. We call them acquaintances, or sometimes we call them bad neighbors, right? Friends serve each other. We give freely. When our friends are in need, would come alongside him and help him. Elijah was a hurt man. He was completely alone in the world. He needed someone to stick around. He needed someone to be beside him. And that's exactly what Elisha did. Friends also sacrifice. Elisha gave up everything. He even burned the oxen and the equipment, gave it all up, and just started to follow Elijah. Now, for the kids that are in here, are you supposed to do that with strangers? No. But Elisha did. Elisha, by the call of God, followed Elijah and just got up and left. Left it all behind. Left his family behind. Left his fortune behind. And followed God's man. It's a lot of sacrifice. This is also how you see if you got genuine friends, right? I'm not going to sacrifice for you. It's all about me. I'm not really a friend. Friends stick around as well. I love this part of it. The whole story started, the whole reason Elisha is in the picture is because Elijah felt completely alone in the world. And God gave Elijah the one person that would stay by his side until the very moment he was gone. People, we need friends like that. All of us need friends that are willing to stick around through the thick and the thin, through the good and the bad. And I'm not just talking about spouses. They're fantastic to have, and they're wonderful. But there are more than just spouses. There are friends in this world that can stay by you through everything. True friends stick around. I remember through again, I won't name any names. Some of you probably know them. I had a friend that was going through a very traumatic situation. Very close to life or death. Pretty much out of his mind in the struggle. Had a phone call with him and just seeing how he was doing, And in the course of that conversation, I realized half of what he's saying isn't even coherent. And he's in a real bad way. Well, it just so happened that was on a Saturday. Weekends are usually tied up by pastors. I was at my last church and I said, folks, I apologize. I need you to find a fill-in because I got to go. Because I don't know if my buddy's going to be around the next day. By Monday morning, he was supposed to have a meeting and it could have went real bad. So I loaded up in the car and threw his luggage in as I could and took off. And came to be beside my friend to stick around through thick and thin. Friends still around today, by the way. We need people like that. Here's something that we don't often think of. But just like Elisha, friends receive a double portion. We often think that as a friend, if we give, we should get equal in return. Right? Spouses, right? Well, if you do this, then I get this, or, vice versa. But that's not how it works. When you are a true friend, you don't just get equal, you get blessed. Elisha learned everything that Elijah did and literally had a double portion. Elijah had a 35-year ministry. Elisha had a 70-year ministry. Elijah had a 3.5-year drought that he predicted and quit. Elisha had a 7-year drought. Elisha did twice as many miracles as Elijah. Actually, he did twice as many miracles minus one until he died. And when Elisha died, they took his body and they threw it in amongst a bunch of bones in a cave, and the bones came to life. So he ended up, at the end of his life, doing twice as many as Elijah. Elijah raised one person from the dead, and Elisha raised two, if you include that one at his death. Everything, when you have a true friendly relationship, everything is not just equal, but it's such a benefit. You can tell. The people that have true friends, they have a completely different character than those that are misers or, all by themselves, aren't they? They pick up things from their friend that they didn't have before. And it's not an equal value. It's actually multiplied. As a matter of fact, it's a proven fact that friends, when they get together and they do business together, they actually do better financially than what they would do on their own. It's not 1-to-1, so you'd make 2. No, it's actually 3 and 4 when they come together. Friends receive a double portion. God created us to be relational people. We are not created to just be an island by ourselves. God walked with Adam in the cool of the day, every day. He had a relationship with him. He was designed to have a relationship with him. And when God found that it was not good for Adam to be alone, what did he do? He put Adam to sleep. And he gave a woe to woman. I'm just joking. No, but it's not good for man to be alone. And so God created woman that we could have partnership and companionship, right? It's not good that we are an island by ourselves. When we feel alone. We don't get as much done. We're not as effective for the Lord or for the world around us. God created us to multiply by the friends that we have. Everyone needs friends. We all need people around us. You all need people around you. My encouragement to you this morning is others need friendship. So be friendly. Be a friend. You know what? My encouragement also to you is we all need friends. So go find a friend. It's really hard in this life to do it alone. It's really hard in this life to lift all the bricks by yourself. It's a whole lot easier when someone can help you do it. Now, I want to be honest as I close. I tricked you a little bit. I gave you half the verse earlier. It says, a man who has friends must himself be friendly. But the rest of that verse says, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. All this whole sermon I've been talking about people finding friends. But really what I've been trying to explain to you is you need a friend that sticks closer than a brother. And there's only one that you can find that can be that. And his name is Jesus. He has done so much for you. And you may not even realize all that He has planted in your life. He wants to be your friend. He's sacrificed so much so that you could have that friendship. And I'd hate for you to miss it. Jesus, right before He died, in John chapter 15, He's talking with His disciples as He's going to the Garden of Gethsemane where He's going to be betrayed. And this is what He says in verse 9. As the Father loved me, so I have loved you. Abide, live in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in His love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you would love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. And you are my friends, if you do whatever I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what the master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all things that I heard from my Father I have made known to you. You didn't choose me, just like Elisha didn't choose Elijah. But I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should remain. That whatever you ask the Father in my name, I may give you. These things I command you, that you love one another. Jesus doesn't want a bunch of servants. He doesn't need your sacrifice. He doesn't need your money. He doesn't need your time. He wants your friendship. He wants to be your friend. He wants a daily relationship with you where you converse. This isn't talking about religion, about coming to a church service every once in a while, or giving enough money, or doing enough good deeds. That's not what he wants. He doesn't care about that. He wants you, a personal relationship with you. Do you realize Jesus served in humility? At the Last Supper, he put the belt around him, the only one that shouldn't have been washing people's feet, and Jesus got down and washed their feet, including Judas, who was about to betray him that night. Jesus serves and served you. Jesus also sacrificed for you. He gave up his very life just so that you could have a relationship with him. He came to this earth just to die and be resurrected so that you and he could spend eternity together. Not just out there after you die, but in your present life today. He will stick with you. He is closer than a brother. He will go with you through every situation of life, from the best times to the hardest times. And if you don't know that relationship, I want you to know that you can. Because friends receive a double portion. You don't just get a get out of jail free card on Judgment Day. You don't just get fire insurance. No. You get a God that lives inside of you, changes you, teaches you to become a better person than you've ever been in your life. I'm really glad none of you knew me before I came to Mount Carmel at 16. I'm really glad a bunch of you don't know me for 10 years ago. Because when Jesus comes into your heart and changes you, the potential that you have is unfathomable. Would you stand with me? Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. It really does mean the world to me that you're getting a blessing out of it. If this video was a blessing, make sure to hit that thumbs up button for me. That way other people can find it as well. Here in the link section, you'll find playlists and new videos that we put out. We try to do 2 or 3 a week. You can also subscribe to the channel by pressing on my face and then hitting the bell icon, and that will alert you to new videos. May God richly bless you.